Commander Raylan stepped off the ship with heavy boots and a heavier heart. The war had ended, but peace felt like a lie. He had lost friends, seen cities burn, and now he stood in a quiet alien outpost where everything was too clean, too calm. He didn't want medals or speeches. He wanted to forget, just for one night. He walked down the shining streets of the alien pleasure district. Soft music played in the air. Glowing lights floated beside doors. Strange perfumes filled the night. Sweet and dizzying, alien beings offered smiles and gestures, but Raylan said nothing. He didn't want someone experienced or fake. He just wanted quiet warmth, even if only for a moment. Then he saw her. She stood alone, away from the others. She had silver blue skin, long dark hair, and glowing gold eyes that looked both curious and afraid. She wore simple cloth, not flashy like the others. Raylan paused. Something in his chest stirred. She wasn't calling him, wasn't even trying to sell anything. She was just ... Standing there, watching the stars, he walked over slowly, unsure why he chose her. She looked up, her voice soft. "You're human." He nodded. "You're not a worker here, are you?" She smiled a little, then looked down. Not exactly. He should have turned away, but he didn't. Instead, he asked, "Can we just sit somewhere? No questions." She nodded. "I know a place." They entered a small room, quiet and warm. No mirrors, no music, no tricks. Just soft cushions and a low table with tea. She poured him a drink with shaking hands. Raylan noticed the way she held the cup, like someone who wasn't used to this. He didn't ask her name, and she didn't ask for his. They just talked. She told him about the stars her people followed. He told her about the earth he barely remembered. When she laughed, it was soft and real. When she touched his arm, it wasn't with practiced fingers. It was gentle, careful, like she didn't want to break him. And when they kissed, it was slow and unsure, like two people who didn't know how to pretend. The night became a blur of whispers and warmth. He held her like she was real, not rented. And she clung to him like he was the only safe thing left in the universe. Later, when she lay beside him, her head on his chest, she whispered, "I don't do this often." Raylan didn't reply. He didn't want to think, didn't want to feel. But her words stayed in his mind like a seed in the dark. When he woke up, the room was empty. Her scent was still in the air, a mix of wildflowers. And starlight, on the pillow, lay a small pendant, a tiny crystal in a spiral shell. He picked it up slowly, confused. It didn't feel like payment or goodbye. It felt like a memory sealed in stone. Raylan waited an hour, then another. She never returned. He asked no one, spoke to no one. He just left, back on his ship. The stars looked dull. He told himself it was nothing, just one night, just a moment. He had been tired. That was all. But days passed, and he still carried the pendant. Nights came, and he still saw her eyes in his dreams. And though he didn't know her name, didn't know where she came from, he felt something missing. It wasn't love, not yet. But it was something close, something dangerous, something that would not let go. He told himself again and again, meant nothing. But deep down, he knew that night had changed something inside him, and one day it would change everything else too. Raylan sat in the pilot chair of the Silver Warden, his fingers tapping against the steel armrest he was supposed to feel. Relief. This was not a combat mission, just an escort run to a quiet sector. But peace made him restless, and ever since that night with the mysterious alien girl, his mind had been anything but calm. He hadn't spoken of her to anyone, not even to his closest crew. They just saw a quiet commander going through the motions. But inside, something pulled him. Her face returned in every dream. And her pendant, always cold in his pocket, never left his side. "Captain," the voice of his second-in-command broke his thoughts. "We're approaching the Drellin sector." Raylan nodded. "Take us in." Drellin was a forgotten part of the galaxy. No trade, no battles, no colonies. It was empty, quiet, and useless in paper. But as they got closer to their target, Raylan saw something that made his heart stop. There, floating near an asteroid field, was a ruined station, half burned, half silent, and on the side of the structure, barely visible through the dust and damage, was a symbol. A swirling spiral shelf, the same shape as the pendant she left behind. Raylan stood up fast, shocking his crew. "Change course," he said sharply. "Take us to that station." "But sir, our orders can wait," he said, voice firm. "I need to see that place." The Silver Warden docked with the broken station. Inside was cold and dark, lights flickering like dying stars. The halls were empty, air stale. Raylan walked slowly, fingers brushing the old metal walls. He wasn't sure what he was looking for, just something. Then he saw it, a mural on a cracked wall. Painted in soft silver and purple tones, it showed a group of female figures standing under a star-shaped moon. Their skin tones varied, some blue, some violet, but all had eyes like gold fire. One of the figures wore a pendant, the same pendant he carried. Raylan stepped closer. Below the painting were alien words he couldn't read, but he took a photo anyway. He turned to leave when an old, broken console lit up behind him. He approached it and pressed a blinking button. A faded hologram flickered to life, showing a young alien girl. Not her, but similar. She was crying, whispering something fast in her own language behind her. Someone shouted her name. The hologram ended with static. Raylan's heart beat faster. He knew this station had been one of their places. And he had just stumbled into a piece of her world, back on the ship. He showed the photos to his crew. "Do you recognize this symbol?" he asked. A young officer squinted. "That looks like the Zyrene symbol." Sir Raylan froze. "Zyrene?" "Yeah," the officer nodded. "Some kind of isolated race. Religious. Very secretive. Where are they now?" "Most say they disappeared decades ago. Others say they still live on hidden moons." Raylan leaned back in his chair, the pendant in his hand. The Zyrene. It had to be her people. She was hiding something that night. Not because she was ashamed, but because she was protected. The rest of the mission went smoothly, but Raylan's mind was elsewhere. He filed a full report, but kept the pendant and mural to himself. Later that night, he sat alone in his quarters. Staring at a star map, he zoomed into the region near Drellin. Several unnamed moons floated there. One of them might be hers. He marked them one by one, then whispered to the dark Ilari, "If that's your name, I'm coming." And somewhere in the stars, far away from war and orders, a girl with golden eyes opened her eyes in the dark. Her hand touched the empty space on her chest where a pendant once lay. And for the first time in many days, she whispered, "Raylan." Raylan didn't ask permission. He didn't wait for orders. After his mission ended, he took a small scout ship, loaded enough supplies for a few days, and headed back to the Forgotten Moons near the Drellin sector. Something deep inside him refused to let go. It wasn't just curiosity, it was her. The system was quiet. Cold stars blinked in the distance like watching eyes. Most moons were just rocks and ice, lifeless and empty. But the fifth moon, gray, forested, and surrounded by a strange mist, caught his attention. It didn't appear on any official charts. It was like it didn't want to be found. Raylan landed in a clearing surrounded by silver leaf trees. The air was thick and still, almost sacred. He stepped out, scanning for life signs. Faint signals appeared, enough to know someone lived here, but just barely. He followed a narrow trail through the forest. His steps quiet, breath low. Hours passed, and just when he started to doubt, he saw it. A small village built into the hills. Su's made of soft stone and glowing vines. No metal, no tech. People moved like shadows, silent, graceful, cautious. When they saw him, they froze. Golden eyes stared from behind curtains. Children ran and hid. Elders whispered and shut their doors. Raylan didn't raise his weapon. He raised his hands and said, "I'm not here to hurt anyone. I'm looking for someone." No one answered. Until a small girl stepped forward, barely 12 in human years. She wore a long robe and held a basket of herbs. Her voice was soft, but clear. "You shouldn't be here." Human Raylan knelt, trying not to look threatening. "I'm looking for a woman," he said. "Blue skin, golden eyes. She left me something." The girl tilted her head. "She left more than that," she whispered. Then turned away. He wanted to follow, but didn't dare force anything. Instead, he waited. And waited. At nightfall, a tall elder approached him, flanked by 2 guards with long wooden staffs. "You walk where no human should tread," the elder said, his voice like wind through trees. "I didn't mean to break any laws." Raylan replied, "But I met one of yours." "I think she needs help." The elder looked at him for a long time, then nodded slowly. "Come," he said, "but understand. What you seek may not want to be found." They walked deep into the woods, past sacred stones and pools of glowing water, and finally they reached a hidden cave. Carvings lined the wall's spirals, moons, stars. And one image that made Raylan stop cold. It was him, drawn in alien paint, next to a woman with glowing eyes and long dark hair. There were scenes of them sitting together, holding hands, lying beneath stars. Painted with love, painted from memory. She came back from the stars broken. The elder said quietly, "She cried for many nights. Painted your face over and over, but refused to speak your name." Raylan touched the wall gently. "I didn't mean to hurt her," he whispered. "Then, why did you leave?" The elder asked. Raylan looked down. "Because I didn't know what that night meant." He said, "But now I do." Suddenly, a sound echoed through the cave. Light footsteps, a soft breath. Raylan turned. There she was, Elari. She stood at the entrance, cloaked in a dark robe, her eyes wide with shock. For a moment, neither moved. Then she stepped forward, slow and unsure. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice shaking. Raylan swallowed hard. "To find you," he said. "Because I couldn't forget." Tears welled in her eyes. "I thought you would," she whispered. "I tried," he said, voice low, "but I couldn't." She reached into her robe and pulled out a string. At the end was a loop where the pendant used to be. "You took it," she said softly. He nodded, pulling it from his pocket. "I kept it close." He replied, "Always." They stood in silence. Then Elari looked at the elders, then back at Raylan. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered. "They won't let you stay." "I didn't come to stay," he said. "I came to ask if you want to leave." Elari didn't speak for a long time. She just stood there in front of Raylan, eyes full of fear and something else, something that looked like hope trying to breathe. The other villagers stayed silent. But the tension in the air was heavy like storm clouds. Raylan felt every eye on him, but he didn't move. He kept his gaze only on her. "You shouldn't have come here," she whispered again, her voice quieter now. "I know," Raylan replied, stepping forward slowly. "But I had to." Elari turned her back to him, clutching the empty pendant string in her hand. She walked toward the carved wall and placed her palm on one of the drawings, the one that showed her and Raylan beneath the star moon. "You don't understand what you did," she said softly, "that night. It wasn't just a mistake." Raylan frowned. "I never thought it was a mistake." Elari turned around sharply, her eyes flashing gold. "It was sacred," she said, her voice suddenly full of pain. "You touched a priestess in training, chosen by the star circle, and I let you." The cave went silent. Even the wind outside stopped. Raylan blinked slowly. "Priestess?" Elari nodded, tears forming again. "I wasn't supposed to touch anyone." Not until my ritual of ascension was complete, she said. That night, with you. It ended everything for me. Raylan stepped back, guilt hitting him like a wave. I didn't know, he whispered. I know, Alari replied. But it doesn't change what happened. She walked to a small altar carved into the stone. Lit by gentle blue fire, a crown made of crystal vines rested there. Broken in the center, that was mine, she said. I was supposed to wear it when I became the voice of the Star Mother. Raylan stared at the cracked crown. What did they do to you? He asked, voice low. They didn't hurt me, Ellery said. But they took everything else. My future, my name in the circle, my place in the galaxy. I became a ghost in my own home. Raylan stepped closer. But why didn't you tell me that night? Alari laughed bitterly. Would it have stopped you? Raylan's jaw clenched. I wouldn't have touched you if I had known. She looked up at him, her golden eyes shining. But I wanted you to, she whispered. That's the truth. Silence fell again, but this time it was warm, not cold. Raylan looked down at the pendant in his hand, then back at the broken crown. I ruined your life, he said, but I swear, I didn't mean to. Alari shook. Her head, you didn't ruin it, she said. You changed it. The village elder stepped forward again, his face calm but firm. She has been under protection since her return, he said. The council feared you would come, Raylan. Looked him in the eyes. I'm not here to take her away, but would you if she asked? The elder replied. Raylan turned to Alari. I don't know your laws, he said. I don't know your customs, but I know how I feel. That night changed something in me. Came because I couldn't stop thinking about you. I came because it felt like I left a piece of myself behind. Ilari's lips parted, her breath caught. She had never heard anyone say something like that to her. Not in her world, not in her life. But if I go with you, she said, I can never come back. Raylan stepped closer, lowering his voice. And if you stay here, will you ever be truly happy? She looked away, tears falling now. I don't know, she whispered. I just know I miss you. The elder watched them both in silence. Then he said, you must decide before the moons rise. If she leaves, she is no longer Zyrene. She will become nothing. Alari stood frozen. Her people, her history, her place in the stars. All tied to this world, but Raylan he was her heartbeat now. And she didn't know how to live without it. Raylan held out his hand. I can't promise you safety, he said, but I can promise you freedom, and whatever future we make it together. She stared at his hand for what felt like forever. Then, slowly, she placed hers in his, and the room exhaled. The elder turned his back and walked away. The cave lights dimmed. The choice was made. Alari didn't look back. She only looked forward toward the stars, toward the unknown, toward him. The morning air was cold, too cold for a world kissed by twin suns. But in the center of the village, the atmosphere was colder still. Dozens of Zyrene elders stood in a circle, cloaked in silver robes, faces still as stone. At the center of that circle stood Alari, hands bound in golden threads, eyes lowered. Raylan was forced to stand outside the ring, surrounded by guards. He had no weapon, no voice here, no right to speak. The trial of spirit had begun, a punishment ceremony older than memory. No one spoke above a whisper, and no child was allowed. To watch, it was a ritual meant to shame, to break, and to erase. One elder stepped forward and began to speak. Alari of the broken crown, you betrayed your oath. You shared your body with an outsider before your ascension. And you carried his memory like a flame. You allowed human hands to touch what was sacred. You turned away from the stars and reached toward shadow. Alari flinched with every word, but she did not cry. Raylan couldn't take it anymore. He stepped forward. She did nothing wrong. I forced nothing. The guards blocked him. pushing him back. "You are not permitted to speak," one hissed, but Raylan shouted anyway. "She's being punished for love." The circle gasped, not at the words, at. The word love was not spoken so freely among the Zyrene. It was a private, sacred thing, not shouted in public like fire. Elari looked up, her lips trembling. Her voice shook as she said, "Stop, Raylan, please." The elder raised his hand. "Elari," he said, "you have one chance to restore your honor. Reject the human, swear you are bewitched, that your heart remains with the stars, and we may still give you a path to forgiveness." Elari stood still. Raylan watched her closely. He wanted her to lie, to save herself, to survive. This, even if it meant walking away, but then she turned slowly, met Raylan's eyes, and spoke loud and clear. "I do not regret what happened. I do not want to return to the path you laid for me. I do not belong to the stars. I belong to myself." The silence broke like glass. Some elders stepped back in horror. Others stared in shock. A few looked down, ashamed. But the one who led the trial only nodded. "So be it," he said. "You are no longer Zyrene." He raised his hand. And the golden threads vanished from Elari's wrists, but so did the glowing pattern on her skin, the mark of her birthright. It faded like dust in the wind. She gasped, one hand reaching for her chest as if trying to hold it in. But it was gone, her connection to her people. Her identity, her legacy wiped clean. Raylan ran to her side, catching her before she fell. He wrapped his arms around her, but she felt hollow, like something inside her had cracked beyond repair. "I'm here," he whispered. "I've got you." She didn't respond, not at first. Then she whispered, "I can't feel them anymore, my ancestors. They're gone." He held her tighter. "I'm sorry," he said. "I never wanted this." She nodded slowly. "I know." The guards stepped aside, no longer seeing her as part of their world. The elders turned their backs, walking away one by one. It was over. The judgment had been made. They walked through the village like ghosts. No one looked at them. Even the trees seemed to lean away. Raylan led her back to his ship, step by step. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just walked in silence. At the ship's ramp, she paused. "I can never go home again," she said, her voice like wind through ash. Raylan turned to her. "Then we'll build a new one," he said. She looked at him, searching his eyes. "You say that like it's easy." "'Twon't be," he replied, "but it'll be ours." She looked back one last time. Matt, the forest, the sky, the world that raised her. Then she stepped into the ship and never looked back again. Raylan stood in the corner of the Trade Council hall, surrounded by polished metal walls and cold stairs. He wore his old uniform, faded and torn from years of war. Others in the room had medals, titles, glowing badges on their chests. Alone had only a name and a request that made no sense to them. "You want to use your reward," said the gray-haired counselor on a non-human exile. Raylan nodded once. "Yes." Whispers filled the chamber. Most warriors asked for land, wealth, or citizenship in the core worlds. Some asked for their families to be relocated to safer colonies. Raylan had been granted one request of honor for his years of service and sacrifice, and he was using it for her. Counselor Naren narrowed his eyes. "Why?" he asked. Raylan didn't blink. "Because she has no home," he said. "And I won't let her walk through the galaxy as nothing." In the back of the chamber, Ilari waited silently. She wore simple gray cloth now, her golden eyes dull, her back straight but tired. She hadn't spoken since they left her world. She didn't fight his decision, but she didn't ask for it either. She just followed, as if unsure what she deserved anymore. The council called a private session. Raylan stood outside the chamber with Ilari. She finally turned to him and asked, "Why are you doing this?" He looked at her gently. "Because someone needs to fight for you now." She shook her head. I'm not worth that much. Yes, he said quietly. You are? After 2 hours, the doors opened again. The council sat in silence for a moment. Then Counselor Naren spoke. Your request is. Approved. Raylan let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. But with conditions, Naren added, she may stay in human space. But she must live under your sponsorship. You are responsible for her actions, her safety. And her behavior. She will have no rights of her own until full review after 1 year. Raylan nodded without hesitation. Done. When they left the hall, Ilari walked beside him but didn't speak. Not until they reached the quiet of the ship's room. Then she finally asked, what did that cost you? Raylan paused. I gave up my core planet access. He said, no land, no retirement benefits, no officer status. I'm just a man now. Ilari stared at him, eyes wide. But you fought for years. She said, you earned that. He smiled a little, tired but certain. I earned you more. She sat down slowly, hands folded in her lap. What now? She asked. Raylan sat beside her. Now we build something, he said. Maybe a house on a small planet. Maybe a garden. Maybe we stay in space. She looked down. I don't know how to be free. Raylan reached out, took her hand gently. Then we'll learn together. The next day, they visited a small market station. Ilari walked through the aisles slowly, touching soft cloth, glowing fruit, little carvings made of wood. No one stared at her. No one called her impure. They just smiled. She smiled back, but it was small, like a seed testing the ground. Raylan watched her from a distance. He saw the way she lingered near music stands. How she touched a tiny wooden flute, then put it down quickly. Later that evening, he handed her a gift, wrapped in a scrap of cloth. She opened it slowly, the same wooden flute. I saw you looking at it, he said. She stared at it, then whispered, I used to play, before everything. He smiled. Then play again, that night. She sat outside the ship under a silver sky and played soft notes that sounded like wind and sorrow. Raylan listened from inside, not wanting to disturb her. He didn't need to. She was healing, note by note. Later, when she came inside, she held the flute close and looked at him differently, like she saw not just a soldier, but something else. She sat beside him and whispered, You gave up everything. He shook his head. No, he said. I gave up what I didn't need. You're what I need. Ilari didn't speak. She just leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. For the first time in many nights, her breathing was calm. For the first time in her life, she felt like she belonged. The cabin sat on a quiet hill beneath twin suns. It wasn't large and it wasn't perfect, but it was warm, peaceful, and filled with things chosen with care. Raylan had built it himself, using local wood, old tools, and the patience war had. Once beaten out of him, Ilari stood by the window each morning, eyes closed, listening to the wind. She had started smiling again, not big smiles, but small, real ones that stayed longer each time. She planted flowers near the front path, blue, ones that only grew in alien soil. She said they reminded her of home, but now, when she said home, she meant this. Raylan worked the garden, hunted small creatures for food, and built tools from scrap. He didn't talk much, but he didn't have to. Ilari understood him now, even in silence, sometimes at night. She'd sit by the fire and play the flute he gave her. The notes danced through the house like memories made of sound. One evening, she played a song he'd never heard before, slow, sad, beautiful. When she finished, she turned to him and said, That's the song my mother sang when I was a child. Raylan nodded. It sounds like something worth remembering. She moved to sit beside him, her head resting on his shoulder. You really gave up everything, didn't you? She asked softly. I gave up what I didn't need. He replied again, I have what matters. She stayed quiet for a long time. Then she said something she had never said before. "I love you, Raylan." Didn't speak, he just turned and kissed her forehead, holding her hand tighter. That was his answer, and she understood it completely. Seasons passed slowly, and their little world grew. Raylan added a second room to the cabin. Elari carved symbols on the walls, siren symbols. But this time, mixed with human letters. She called it their shared language, their own language. They welcomed traders, shared food, and taught local kids how to grow things. No one cared that she was alien. No one asked where she came from. All they saw was the kindness in her voice, the strength in her eyes, and the way she looked at Raylan like he hung the stars himself. One evening, as the sky turned golden, Elari sat outside watching the sun set. Raylan joined her, carrying 2 mugs of hot tea. He sat beside her and looked over the hills. "We made it," he said quietly. Elari nodded. "I didn't think I would survive losing everything." Raylan looked at her gently. "You didn't lose everything," he said. "You changed." She turned to him. "And you? What did you lose?" He thought for a moment, then said, "I lost a war, but I won you." They sat in silence, the warm air wrapping around them like a soft blanket. Fireflies blinked nearby. Stars began to show above. Elari leaned into him and whispered, "Do you ever regret it?" Raylan shook his head slowly. "Not for a second," he said. "You were never just one night to me. You were the moment everything started to matter again." She closed her eyes, tears soft on her cheeks. "I used to believe I was born for the stars," she whispered. "But now I know. I was born to find you." Raylan kissed her hand. "You're not mine for just one night," he said. "You're mine for forever." And as the stars glowed above them, and the night wrapped the hills in peace, a broken warrior and a fallen priestess, 2 people who had lost everything, sat side by side. No thrones, no crowns, no medals, just love. Just each other, and that was enough, forever.